What is right and wrong? A philosopher was asked, what is right and wrong? He said, depends. Depends on who's writing the story. Our first speaker today, Denise Levine. Over to you, Denise.
Thanks, Van. Yeah, it's an interesting subject. I have a theory, and my theory is such where if you're not harming yourself or not harming others, and when I say others, I mean other humans, other animals, the environment, the earth, then the question is what is right or wrong? And so I see it more of a construct of instead of just right or wrong, just more absolute truth. So, and who gets to decide what is right or wrong? So much of what we call right or wrong is really just conditioning, rules that we inherit and, sometimes don't examine well enough in my mind. And we equate right and wrong with normal and abnormal. And that's where things get, to me, they get problematic. And I'll just give an example. My daughter's autistic, and she's going to be 30 this year. And because she isn't socially conditioned in the same way as most of us, she chooses what she likes without concern for social rules. So she loves bright colors, pink, orange, yellow, and she loves them year round, even in winter. So why society tells us that standing out in winter requires the dark colors, and that would be all wrong to wear bright colors. And I'm just generalizing here, of course, but there's some unspoken rules about how we should look and behave. So none of that has anything to do with harm, obviously, but it has to do with conformity and fear. And fear of being different, fear of breaking from the mundane, fear of being seen. And two of my favorite philosophers here. So Aristotle framed ethics around lived virtue and balance rather than rigid moral rules. And Marcus Aurelius emphasized that disturbance comes not from actions themselves, but from the judgments we attach to them. So from that perspective, the way I see it, many of our moral rules are not universal truths, but human-made agreements, if you will, that are often rooted in fear rather than wisdom. So I don't believe the world came with a fixed rule book per se. I think we may have created that, and rightly so in many circumstances. But I think it's worth questioning whether what we label as wrong is actually harmful or if it's just simply familiar. So anyway, just some initial thoughts, and I've got a few more to come.
Thank you, Denise. Over to you, Drake.
Yeah, I think what is right and wrong is a very difficult question to answer. It's very nuanced because it depends very much on the person and the situation. Is it objectively right and wrong or subjectively? If you want to look at the roots of it, it comes back to, in a lot of cases, morally, is it right or wrong? But even the morals depend on the person's outlook and what they believe in. For example, I think almost everyone can agree that, excuse me, almost everyone can agree that it's wrong to kill someone. However, there's situations where we say, well, it's not. If you're defending your own life and there's no other option, most people would again say that you're not wrong to defend yourself. Um, However, from the other person's point of view, they would think, yes, you are very wrong for doing that. Um, and we can broaden that to wars and right and wrong there. And one side would have a certain opinion and the other the opposite, and both sides thinking they're right and the other is wrong. Um, so what you look at is always going to be very subjective on your point of view. And it's difficult, if not impossible, to find something that is purely, cleanly, objectively right or wrong because we can view it from different lenses. So I'll let someone else speak now.
Thank you. What is right and wrong seems to change with time and location. It can be driven by individual needs or cultural zeitgeist. I think there's individual right and wrong, and there's collective right and wrong. Collective would be family, company, religion, country. Each of these would have their own sets of what is right and wrong. And they're essentially driven by needs and the flavor of that time. That is the zeitgeist of that time. There was a time when smoking was encouraged as the right thing to do, and now it's not. There was a time when child marriage was encouraged as the right thing to do. Now it's not. There was a time when wearing glasses was considered, reading glasses was considered sacrilege, an act against God. And now it's considered the most simple thing to do when your eyes don't see right. So, right and wrong does change with time, it does change with our perspectives. And there are some rights and wrongs that we've more or less come to as a society, but they also seem to change with time. It's interesting when you think about what was right 100 or 200 years ago and what will be right and wrong maybe 500 years from now. That's something I'd like to see. Thank you. Over to you, Kirsten.
Okay. So piggybacking a little bit on what Denise was saying with the not harming others. So Immanuel Kant argued that kind of right and wrong is not just about outcomes. And he has this quote, act that you use humanity, whether in your own person or in any other, always at the same time as an end rather than a means. So kind of break it down. It's basically, when we use someone as a means, then it can be, manipulation, or we're using them as a tool to get what we want. And when we see that other person or sentient being as an end, that then we're giving that person the full respect. Or animal full respect. Treating someone as an end means recognizing their dignity and autonomy. So just a simple example, like if you lie to your friend to get them to help you with something, then even though the outcome is the same, you're still disrespecting that person. But if you are upfront with them, you might, just offer thanks, maybe give them something in return, then you're treating them as an ends. It's the same in business. If you hire people and don't pay them well, or just kind of treat them again as a means to an end, then that would be considered wrong. Whereas if you treat them with dignity, give them appropriate payment, benefits, all of those things, then you are respecting your employees and treating them as an ends and not just a means.
Thank you. Drake?
Yeah, I just wanted to reply to Kirsten's comment there. And I understand where she's coming from with that. The potential slippery slope there is this sort of leads us into the ends justify the means. And it might end up being a very good thing for that person. However, the way you go about it uh, may have horrible consequences along the way and not be good. And you've seen in many conflicts in that when we expand this on a larger scale that while it all turned out okay in the end, so those things that happened before were justified. Um, and I know that's not where Kirsten was going, but I think it's one of those slippery slopes where if we look at it just in one way, it can lead off in directions we hadn't intended, or perhaps in some cases, some people may have intended for those and didn't care, just want to have their end as they wanted it. And it was good for them, good for the other person, but not worrying about the consequences in between.
Thank you. That was a lovely response. Kirsten, you'd like to respond to that?
I'm just going to say, to be fair, I brought this up to Vin beforehand, and he also disagreed with the sentiment. I should have known not to bring it up in session.
Thank you. Over to you, Tulip.
So, yeah, right and wrong are subjective, they're cultural, and obviously, not everyone can be a vigilante. So, there are laws that are created, right? And I believe, especially for people who are far away from their conscience, some people just, they live in a certain way, but they need that law to make them civil. Um, and I guess that's why I enjoy my art, because there is no right and wrong. It's just about feeling. So when I create, like when I create a painting, I just create it, right? And then something in me has to say I like it. There's no right and wrong. So yeah.
Thank you, Tulip. Going again to what Kirsten said about Immanuel Kant, if I remember right, he said, when it comes to people, there's ends and means. And if you're using people as a means to an end, then it's wrong. And if the people are the ends, then it's right. Somehow, I probably haven't understood that right, but from what I understand, I disagree with it, because that's also so subjective. If you look back at time, we celebrate Robin Hood, but at the same time, theft is a crime for us. So there's so much to think about. Or companies use people to achieve an end. So according to Kant, that would be wrong. Whereas we don't see it that way anymore. We see it as a good thing that you have a job and you are productive. So it's something debatable, something for us to explore there. Over to you, Denise.
So just to go back to Kirsten, I have to say that it kind of resonates with me. Simply, I've had a lot of issues, not myself, but in my family with medical issues. And, then the question becomes, do you spare somebody the pain of knowing something? Like if you're sick and you don't want your family to, like, is it wrong or is it right to spare somebody pain? From that perspective, right? So I don't know. I see both sides, but I definitely understand what you're saying, Kirsten. And again, for me, it comes down to harming. Like, are you harming yourself or anyone else or anything else in the process? And how does that play into right or wrong? And another way, I was just thinking about this too. Another way to think about right or wrong is through responsibility rather than rules. And I think we have kind of touched on it a little bit, but instead of asking whether something is right or wrong according to like external standards, the more meaningful question to me is, is it something that maybe whether we're acting consciously or automatically. So many moral judgments are inherited rather than examined. And as Vin has so rightly pointed out, absorbed from culture, religion, social norms, without any reflection. The good thing is that time has evolved a lot of that for sure, right or wrong. But from this perspective, to me, ethics is less about obedience and more about awareness. So I'm going to bring Marcus Aurelius back into the picture again. If I had a time machine, man, I would love to go back in time and meet this guy. Anyway, he emphasized inner responsibility and that you are accountable for your actions, intentions, and how you meet the moment, so to speak, not for conforming to external expectations. And harm often doesn't arise because people break rules. It arises because people act unconsciously, driven by fear, ego, conditioning, the need for money, power, whatever you want to put in there. So I find when awareness is present, restraint and compassion tend to just follow naturally without any need for rigid moral codes. And this shifts right and wrong away from those fixed categories and towards consciousness itself. So, on a broader level, if we looked at this on a broader level, the same principle applies to society. Communities and systems also carry responsibility, not to simply enforce rules, but to examine the real impact of their norms. So, when rules cause harm, marginalization, or dehumanization, the moral failure to me is no longer individual, but rather it's collective. And at that point, the question is no longer, sorry, I got lots of offshoots here, but then the question becomes is no longer whether something is socially acceptable or accepted or legally justified, but whether it's being met with awareness, accountability, and responsibility for its consequences. So anyway, that's a lot all in one go there, but it just makes me think about those particular points.
Thank you. Tulip?
Something that Denise spoke, I can't remember what, but it sparked a thought about a very sensitive thing, about euthanasia. So that's like you have to be a highly evolved society to legalize something like euthanasia, because the same thing, if it's legalized elsewhere, it can be misused. So yeah, just something, things like that.
Thank you, Tulip. Bringing it down to a more tactical or molecular level, at an individual level, what is it that drives you to choose right from wrong? I'll give you two examples and leave it to you to decide. In military strategy, it is common to do deceptive maneuvers. If you want to distract the enemy, you send in an assault force in one direction, while your main force is going to come from another direction. So the first one that you've sent is very likely going to get all of them killed. So is that right? Is that wrong? Or let's talk about something more current and applicable today, would be men in women's sports. So this is from the transgender point of view. It is vital for us to be able to give a voice and a place for the transgender community. But at the same time, that would also mean displacing many women. So is it right? Is it wrong? What helps you as an individual make your choices? Thank you. Tulip.
Yeah, that's so true. So there are a few points that came to me about what's right and wrong about life in general. Um, I mean, there are so many rules normally that people follow, or even lifestyles. So I believe one should follow what works for them, because very often we think that there's something right for us, but because of society, because of the pressure, or because of because of society, we don't allow that aspect of us to evolve or grow. So it's important to follow what's within, yet keeping, like basic, obviously, laws in mind. As long as you're not harming anyone, you got to make sense of what's right for you. Any kind of lifestyle choice, it could be a sport, it could be your workout, it could be diet, or anything in yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Denise.
With regard to what Tulip was saying, is that what I wish, and what you had asked, Vin, about, what, how do you make choices between right or wrong? And I feel sometimes a lot of people just want to fit in, and their choices are based on that, versus their own individual selves. No one wants to be an outlier. Everyone just wants to kind of not, wrinkle any feathers, so to speak. And I really wish that more people would kind of dance to their own beat, so to speak. And I certainly see that with my daughter. As I mentioned at the beginning, she is not conditionable with her autism, and she's kind of on the moderate to severe side of things. So she's not aware of societal norms or anything like that. And it's really cool, actually, to watch her do her thing safely, of course, but without that conditioning or wondering what people are thinking, and just doing what's inside. And I wish that for more people.
Thank you, Denise. Kirsten, over to you.
Just from what Denise said, kind of that piece about fitting in. And this might not come back to the question you asked, Vin, but I think of how polarized our society is right now, and how I think so much of it is about fitting in, and it seems like we've gone more toward it's about kind of being right versus looking at what is actually right. And the way I see that particularly is because it's like we rarely will criticize someone on our own side or praise someone on the other side. And there's no way that there's not good and right on both sides. So I was just thinking about that, how kind of this right and wrong has almost become more of a label and an identity than a seeking of what's truly right and wrong.
Thank you, Kirsten. Looks like we're at the end of our episode. Thank you, everybody. This has been fun. It's been deep, lots to think about, lots to mull over. And thank you. Looking forward to seeing you at our next episode. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.